okay, Jordan Peterson. Everyone here probably has heard that name. He's very controversial, primarily in school for a gender pronouns issue. He's also basically known for public talks and lectures regarding, I guess, a rebuttal to the notion of the patriarchy and how the real victims in modern society, or what he calls, he was postmodernism, is the male struggle, and that the male struggle is basically sidelined for whatever the talk of the day is. So here's a video. It's one of his most famous interviews, actually. I don't know how many views. I don't know if this is the original one, but I remember this is actually one of the videos that propelled him into fame. Besides the whole talk he had about gender pronouns, it was this one. Yeah, look, 2.1 million views. Wow.
So that's my idea of the patriarchy, which is a system of male dominance of society.
Yeah, but that's not my sense of the patriarchy.
So what's yours?
Well, in what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labour.
Very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely? What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper-successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely appropriate.
But I could say equally well that most rape victims are women. Terrible things happen to people of both sexes.
And you could say that with perfect utility, but that doesn't provide any evidence for the existence of a male-dominated patriarchy.
Do you think that men have it worse now than they did historically before? I guess.
I'm not going to discredit, hardships regardless of gender. And I think that to even try to is like the wrong approach. Everyone has hardships. Every society has absolutely massive hardships that should not be discredited or made to seem more important than any other hardship. What Jordan Peterson is arguing, though, doesn't really make sense to me, because he's basing it on like numbers, like the number of males found in prison, the number of whatever other metric that he's listed, and dominance isn't just the number of people. It's not a minority versus majority. It's like power, which is not, it's not a metric. It's right. Like who makes the decision at the end of the day. And also I would argue that if it is a number, he's kind of contradicting himself, because he's saying that, I'm going to go back to the example of there are more men in prison. Okay, well then men dominate prison.
I guess.
His argument just doesn't make sense to me in that aspect, without going on like a feminist tangent there.
I'm sure if you go back and you talk to an evolutionary psychologist, they'll say, "Oh, it's common sense, man. Men can beat women, therefore, power structures form." And then you just take that across space and time. But the truth is, a small group of people, just historically, you look at the bell curve, like any bell curve, there's going to be this portion that have power and can use that power and subjugate masses. Yeah. And it is true that men were, look at the Victorian era. When you picture a Victorian era, if you guys ever do, you probably picture like Downton Abbey. And you're picturing, basically men are the kings, women just have to look pretty and powder their noses, and that's kind of like, but really the average life of a Victorian male is you didn't live past 35 years old. When you're like 6 years old, you're working, you're a chimney sweep because you're finally small enough to fit through the chimney. That was your job. And you get old enough to hopefully make a few pence. In fact, an average man was so poor at that time, if you're not part of what they call the aristocracy, that you would pay money because you couldn't afford a bed. You'd pay money to go on these standing beds. You just stand and sit, like, this is just life.
Imagine not being permitted to work.
Yeah, so that's less power, 100%. So that is less power. Let me think this through. Yeah. Women always had less power. Yeah. That goes without question. Yeah. So who's had it harder? In terms of, if I had to be a woman in that time, I would basically feel kind of helpless in the sense of, I just have to submit my will that, look, I'm not gonna be able to vote. I'm not, I don't really have a say. the most I could do is turn the neck of my husband. You know, they say the husband's the head of the household, but the woman's the neck. I don't know if you've ever heard that terminology. That's probably as much power as I'll have. And from that perspective, I would feel pretty defeatist. However, when there is a war, I would probably feel relieved that, okay, they're not going to ask me to go. I mean, thank God I don't have to deal with that headache. What is the average man's life like? Look at how the average woman's life was like, and maybe make a decision from there, instead of looking at the, on either end of the extreme.
Right. I mean, I'm going to ask the question, like, what, number one, does it really matter that who suffered more in the past? Like,
Look, but everyone wants bragging rights, man. And I'll give you an example. I had to pick daycare.
Yep.
The daycare I'm in is at like 99.99% female workers, okay? If I saw an ad for an all-male daycare, I don't think I'd ever vote my dollar there. For no other reason than my own bias, I'll be honest. It's just my own bias. I think getting past those biases is going to be tough, and some biases, like in childcare, I don't see that ever change. I don't see a daycare that's like daddy daycare. It was cool in the movie. I don't think that's going to happen in the I don't think free market's ever going to allow that.
Right.
But look, I don't think there's any harm in having better in parity. So in again, unfortunately, I can only provide you anecdotes. So from people that I know born from like 94, 91, okay, that's like the generation of the majority of my friends come from that generation. Surprisingly, I know, like, against anecdotal, the female friends I have, including my wife, are generally much more making more money, have better positions in general, just on a general basis, than my male friends. So like, I don't know if that's a shift in things, but the average like woman I know in my generation generally has been earning more, at least YT, or like if you look at their just careers overall, they're earning more and have like much more stable careers than I've noticed the men, which is like something I didn't expect, like for some reason, just you could say for bias. I didn't think that would happen that way, but it seems to be happening. My wife is doing great, like her whole, well, she's in it's HR again, you could say culture is primarily female. Right. They all do great. A lot of guys I know are struggling to find jobs. Hey, I'm switching jobs, I'm switching careers. Just got laid off here, my contract expired here. Where I find a lot of the women I go on LinkedIn, all my friends just got promoted. I now work at Ernst & Young. I have this new director, whatever. I don't know if I feel like the tides may be turning. I don't know if there's data to support it, but.
I certainly hope the tides are turning, and that's amazing to hear that your friend group it's more fairly represented, let's say.
Like, I don't feel like, damn, these girls are suffering. I feel like, damn, these girls are killing it. What the hell are we doing?
For Martin Luther King Jr. Day, he released a video short that he produced, and it was ultimately asking the question of, you have to ask yourself, if you had to go back in time to a certain time period based on who you are and what you are, women, male, where your background, your race, your ethnicity, where would you choose to go? And if you are like, hell yeah, take me back to the Roman Empire, that means that like you could have thrived there. You had the platform to thrive there, and that's not even a level of consciousness that you have to think about. Like, if you're a woman in the Roman Empire,
right.
Like, sweet, I'll get raped, highly likely. I won't be able to make any money. I will have next to no decision-making power. And like, I can go back until like the 80s. And I mean, and not to just further this, but if you've ever watched Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, oh my God, it's like powerful. It'll change your perspective because all of the rules that are in her novels and now in this TV show are based on real laws that in the past existed or currently exist, and it's like very alarming. So I would argue that if you don't have to think about the challenges that you would be presented in a different period of historical time, then you're already lucky.
I got you. I think guys though romanticize, I'd rather go to the Roman Empire. Okay, go see what it's like to not have porcelain toilets. Go enjoy. There's no such thing as toilet paper. There's no what kind of life are you doing?
Well, and that even goes back, right? It goes on the same page as how the 9 to 5, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, corporate system is set up, in that is, you can function fairly consistently as a male throughout that period of time each month. Women don't cycle that way. So like, we as a whole, arguably, period havers, let's say, don't have that consistency month by month, like even going on like a moon cycle, I will argue, that whole structure and that you can be on 100%, which is what your companies expect you to be, during that time of the month is like brutal. Some people have to take time off work, they have to use sick days because of that, even though it's a 100% natural thing that has never once been considered in that structure of your 9-to-5 corporate job.
The problem is it's capitalism. Like why then I'll just hire someone who doesn't have that. Like I'm saying that would be the argument. They're like, okay, like I get it, I empathize with you. I just, unless it's like she's too valuable, I have to give her that time. Like if that's not the answer, then it's gonna be like, of course.
But if you want to have like proper representation, she should be that valuable. That's
what I'm saying. So if it becomes not capitalism and something else where it's not just about the free market, it's not just about the dollar, it's about humanity, and let's add a little bit more humanity, then then it should be that way. And we vote with our dollar. So if there's a company that starts doing that, okay, that's competing with Amazon, let's just say, then go vote. You give your dollar to them, and that's how the world, that's how I see the world working. We end up voting with our dollar.